Continuing on with chapter 22. So these are the items that cannot go into trash. Again, batteries. Regular batteries have lead. Rechargeable have cadmium, and if those they're heavy metals, if they leach into groundwater, it can contaminate groundwater. And so there's battery collectors at our library and at City Hall, and that's where you take those. Fluorescent light bulbs, the new eco-friendly ones, actually have a lot of mercury, which is kind of sad. And so what do you do with this stuff? Well, there are hazardous waste pickups every few months at COC. You can drive your car through and drop off all this stuff. And you can also call once a year and have it all picked up from your house as well, which I've done before. It's not that it just can't go, it's actually illegal to throw away these things into the regular trash. 665. E-waste cannot go into the regular trash as well. So you can't throw away an old cell phone or an old computer or a TV or other electronic devices because within the product they have heavy metals. And so they need to go to hazardous waste sites. The law RCRA, which we also talked about as the same law that, let me go back to that page, that creates the landfill. So here's RCRA that specifies how waste should be added to a landfill. So this is the same law that also requires large generators of hazardous waste to track that hazardous waste from cradle to grave, which means from when it's produced until it's disposed of. A famous site with a bad situation was in Bhopal, India. There was a toxic gas that killed 4,000 to 8,000 people from a pesticide factory, and that's a famous place you need to know. So how do we get rid of our hazardous waste? There's a few ways. We can build a hazardous waste landfill. This involves several liners and lots of leachate remover. We build them way in the desert, far from aquifers. Now, these are expensive landfills, and because they're expensive, some companies illegally dump their hazardous waste so they don't have to pay for its removal. Another thing we can do is surface impoundments. So you have liquid hazardous waste here, and the water inside will evaporate, leaving behind a solid, is the idea behind it. The problem with it is that these surface impoundments can overflow with heavy rain. They can leak into soils or aquifers, and they can also evaporate toxic, that's the word toxic, liquids as well. And that's the problem with surface impoundments. On the next page, we have deep well injections, and that's where a well is drilled deep beneath your water table. This is on page 668. And we pump liquid hazardous waste into porous rocks. The problems with this one is that your metal pipes can corrode and leak hazardous waste into soil and aquifers. I do have some handouts, so when you study this chapter, make sure you reread the bioremediation and phytoremediation. Bioremediation is where you use genetically modified bacteria to clean up a hazardous spill, like an oil spill. Phytoremediation is for hazardous waste in soil, like a spill of some kind of rocket fuel or something like that, or some harmful pesticide that was sprayed and now it's in the soil. You can plant certain plants that will soak up that hazardous waste in their roots, and then you dispose of the plants. E-waste. So e-waste contains lead. So this is electronic waste, and the page here, 668 and 669, talks about what's in e-waste. But these are the heavy metals. Lead is the most common in e-waste. You also have mercury, chromium, cadmium, and cadmium is also in rechargeable batteries. Here's a picture of the injection well that we sticky noted on the last page. And so here's the porous rock that you would inject the hazardous waste into. The problem is what if it corrodes and breaks the pipe breaks in these aquifers? That's a problem. All right, radioactive waste. So currently there's two sources of radioactive waste. The first is from power plants that use uranium-235. So currently all the power plants store their own waste. It's not at Yucca Mountain. Do not write it's at Yucca Mountain because it's not. Now Yucca Mountain is the plan, but it's not implemented. So currently power plants store their own at their own power plant. And then nuclear weapons from our military, the waste is stored at WIP, which is in New Mexico. Long-term storage for both of these is planned for Yucca Mountain. CERCLA is another law to know. It's the last law to know. We also call it Superfund. And when you have a hugely hazardous chemical waste site, this law makes the perpetrators responsible for the cleanup. And so the U.S. government goes after them and says, you have to clean this up. It's hazardous to human health, clean it up. If the company has gone out of business and cannot be found, or if it wasn't absorbed into another company or whatever, then the U.S. government money, so basically our tax money, pays for the cleanup of these hazardous waste sites. There is a priority list. We don't have infinite tax money, so there's a priority list of the worst sites, and those ones get cleaned up first with the tax money. That's all for sticky notes.